Big recruits making big announcements in the next few weeks right here at USC Trojans Live, our 60th edition. Please get yourself settled, but hit that like button before you do so. Get that out of the way. Please share these videos out on social media. Let folks know that we are here. Believe it or not everyone knows that Matt Zemek is here every Monday night giving his insights and perspective on USC football. Everyone that says fight on at any point, if that's a thing in your life, you should know that Matt and I are here on Monday nights. So think of those poor people out there that don't know we've got the discussion, debate, and analysis here on USC football, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Matt, good to see you. How you doing?
All right. And for people who don't know that I'm here with you every Monday night, the main thing is you need to know that by late August when the season starts, and then we really get this party started here at USC Trojans Live.
Well, I got to say that we will get the party started as each conference unveils its media days coming up. The Big 12 hits the podium tomorrow. Wow, early July 12th for the Big 12, or July 12th, I guess, on Wednesday. That would be for the Big 12, the 12th and the 13th. And the Pac-12, of course, crams them all in on one day on that Friday after the SEC finishes up a big 4-day event. It's the Pac-12 Friday on July 21st, and we'll see if a Pac-12 media rights deal is signed and delivered and announced before that, or if that's the only thing that's going to hit people's social media and internet concerning Pac-12 football. It's going to be dominated by that discussion one way or the other. Also, of course, we've got Taylor Tatum, arguably the best running back in high school football, announcing his decision coming up on that same day of July 21st on that Friday. And also the top linebacker on the West Coast, Kingston Viliamu-Asa. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, but he is down to Ohio State to Notre Dame and USC. He's announcing on July 23rd as well. So a couple big fish out there, and we will see where they land.
Yeah, so a few things worth talking about here. One is that Taylor Tatum has picked up a few crystal balls. So I'm the editor of Trojans Wire, but I keep tabs on what the other College Wire sites are reporting. And so I've read on Monday that Sooners Wire, they've reported that Taylor Tatum has picked up a few Oklahoma crystal balls. So Trojan fans, don't want to say it's a done deal, but certainly the momentum is trending toward Norman on that particular recruitment with Taylor Tatum. So just got to call it as we see it, and as my colleagues at Sooners Wire are reporting. So it is what it is. The Kingston Viliamu-Asa recruitment, this is an interesting one. Tim Prangley's going to come on our show at a later point tonight. He's the co-host of Trojan Conquest Live with Rick Anaya, Sundays during the summer, for the next few weeks at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. It had been 8 and 5, but it's going to be 9 and 6 for the next few weeks. Tim is of the mindset that the Viliamu-Asa, and we can just call him KVA.
I was going to say that rolls off your tongue, Matt. That was expertly pronounced there. I am just new to this young man in the last week, and so that was my first try at his last name, and it was butchered fairly well. I knew it had to be more nuanced than that. Well done, Matt.
We can just call him KVA, and July 23rd is KVA Day. And so it's interesting that Tim is of the view that this is basically a USC Notre Dame battle, but the great athletic beat writer, USC beat writer Antonio Morales, he had a story Monday morning in The Athletic saying that, KVA has been wearing Ohio State gloves in recent workouts, public workouts. And you wonder, is he just doing that for kicks? Maybe there's something there. There's some there in terms of the Ohio State gloves. So you can just take that for what it is. But anyway, this is one of the bigger recruitments. Like Taylor Tatum, okay, if USC doesn't get a running back, I mean, that running back room is still, right now. It's in pretty good shape, and Lincoln Riley's ability to also replenish through the portal. We've seen it with Travis Dye. We've seen it with Austin Jones. We've seen it with Marshawn Lloyd. It's really on defense where USC needs to win some signature recruitments. If you've been watching Trojan Conquest Live with Tim and Rick, they talked about KVA on Sunday. The week before, there was a lot of emphasis, especially Rick and I, talking about the need to get that depth, stack that depth on the defensive line. And so with KVA, a really big physical linebacker who, by the fact that he's being courted by both Notre Dame and Ohio State, moving into an era when USC's in the Big Ten, that's not just one future opponent, Notre Dame. It's now two future opponents, since Ohio State is going to be a regular USC opponent every 2 years, and also in potential Big Ten championship games as well. So, every recruitment matters. Every recruitment is a legitimate point of interest. But if you are looking at, that's a recruiting battle USC could really use. That's a battle USC really needs to win. KVA certainly fits that. And we'll see what happens on July 23rd, but it's definitely worth paying attention to that. And, there's a lot of debate, I would say, about how central Ohio State is in the conversation. The Antonio Morales report from The Athletic would suggest, if not indicate, that Ohio State's more central to this than others would currently think. So, it's going to be interesting how this all shakes out and what decision KVA ultimately lands on.
I believe I saw something today where KVA was asked about the gloves, and he was very vague in his response. So it could mean something. It may just mean that he just happened to pick up those gloves, and now he's used to them and he likes them. And then he'll be soon, after committing to USC, telling them, hey, can you send me some gloves that fit a little bit better than the ones that you sent me? Because I like these a little bit better. It could be completely inconsequential, or it could be a tip. And for you World War II enthusiasts, and that can recognize and appreciate Matt's tip of the hat to KVA Day, VE Day, VJ Day, of course, of World War II, victory in Europe and Japan. That's at least where I went with that reference there.
Okay, so we got Hank, an Oklahoma fan, chiming in. Oh, so you don't really care what Tatum does, not buying it. Hank, we care, but you can't care the same amount about everything, right? You can't view late September baseball games the same way you care about mid-April baseball games. Not everything means exactly the same. This is Wimbledon week. A Wimbledon semifinal is a bigger deal than, the first round of an ATP 250 match in Hertogenbosch or some other, middle of nowhere tour stop. Just not everything can be cared for at the same level. There are levels of differentiation. And Hank, having been through the Lincoln Riley experience at Oklahoma, that Lincoln Riley can coach offense pretty well. He can, make an elite meal with the groceries that he has on offense, to use that Bill Parcells football analogy of what you have to cook with. And he's not nearly as good at cooking a really fine meal on defense. So, it's defense where USC needs to win more recruiting battles, Hank. I mean, if you want to dispute that, if you're going to dispute the claim that, USC needs to give Alex Grinch more resources on the recruiting trail than what Lincoln Riley has on offense, if you're going to dispute that, be my guest. But I would think that you would, agree with that basic, line of thought. So we care. It would be great to have as versatile and talented a running back as Taylor Tatum. But in terms of the big picture, just Hank, if you were to just tell me, Matt, which recruit do you want more? Which recruit do you need more at USC? Taylor Tatum or KVA? It is not a close call. KVA is by far the more valuable, bigger recruit. So that's a complete answer to your point, and just wanted to kind of tackle that for everyone watching here. at the Voice of College Football.
I'll liken USC situation to another show that we do, of course, and another prominent brand, Ohio State. It's probably the most obvious case in college football. When they signed 4 of the top 9 wide receivers in high school football, well, getting the 5th out of the top 10 that's great. But hey, how about a linebacker? And so Ohio State's recent grabs on the defensive side are so much more meaningful than, again, just another top 10 wide receiver. Where is he going to play? So the same obviously holds true for USC and anybody that's paying attention. Yes, Taylor Tatum. If it's like the NFL draft, there is part need, roster need. And then there is just, okay, sometimes you just can't ignore that special player, even though, hey, we got a really good running back, but hey, this could be the next Barry Sanders. So obviously those special players, it's a different component. But yes, USC is loaded on offense and very much in need on defense. Leave those comments and questions. We'll get back to the USC talk, the specific USC talk, as you guys drive the show. You are ultimately the producer of the show, and you will catch our attention with a super chat contribution as well. So please consider that. And again, the YouTube membership here at the Voice of College Football USC includes bonus segments. I'm losing track now. We're up near 10 bonus segments with Matt and myself. We have another really good topic to produce tonight that will be added to the channel in the next few days. So please check that out. Go to the front page of the channel here. Look at the tiers. And if you become a member in the top 2 tiers, then you become eligible for the bonus content. And it's, as Matt would say, choice cuts. Absolutely. The filet mignon. The conversations are phenomenal. I just try to hang on and provide something. Matt just delivers. So it is well worth it. No question about that. And certainly you can ask any of the members that are already partaking of that content. They certainly have been complimentary of what we've delivered with those bonus segments. Of course, the big bomb in college football today was dropped in Evanston, Illinois. Pat Fitzgerald, 17 years as head coach at Northwestern, a legendary figure there at the university as a great linebacker, college football Hall of Famer as a player. And despite all the limitations and issues, challenges at Northwestern, has lifted that to a 2-time Big Ten championship game participant and the work that he's done. And he's been a respected coach as well in regards to how we have all believed he's conducted himself in the program. But by looking at the axe that was dropped and the letters and the information and the investigation and all that came to light today, wow, some really inappropriate, unnecessary treatment of players, hazing that was taken to just, disgusting degrees. So it's all out there for you to read. But let's bring this home to a USC and a Big Ten story topic here with Coach's Hot Sheets. And when I've looked at those, Matt, over the last couple off seasons, and especially after a 1-11 campaign, I had included Pat Fitzgerald, not, of course, knowing what was going on here, and that would be his ultimate demise, but looking at the coaching record and saying, okay, here's a favored son who's done really good things over the course of 17 years, but we're looking at just an atrocious football product the last 2 seasons. And, what are they going to do with that? Well, that is made, minds have been made up because of, transgressions off the field. And now we look at the entire landscape of the conference, and it's always intriguing to look down the road and see where trajectories are headed for the various coaches. And in looking at the Big Ten with 2 new coaches, Wisconsin and Nebraska, obviously those guys are safe and there's bright futures and high ceilings expected there at Nebraska and Wisconsin, but other coaches have been around the league for a while and their stays may be growing a bit thin.
Yeah, so there's a lot to consider in terms of Big Ten hot seats. So just Pat Fitzgerald being canned like that's just a natural entry point into this. And so USC fans might say, wait a minute, like the Big Ten, like we're not there yet. But USC is going to be there 1 year from now, and it's definitely worth looking at, like what's going to be the future landscape of the Big Ten coaching architecture. When Lincoln Riley and USC enter the conference 1 year from now, July 1st is going to be the official entry date next year. And then, of course, USC's first season is going to be next year. So Lincoln Riley won't coach against Pat Fitzgerald. Who else might he not coach against? It's a relevant question. Purely in terms of like the next coach most likely to be given a pink slip, I would say it's Tom Allen at Indiana. I think you have to go there first. I think that's like the most likely domino to fall first. That Indiana has really fallen on hard times. They had the great pandemic season, but of course it was the pandemic season when nothing was normal. Michigan had a terrible year that year. Kids couldn't practice at a lot of locations. It was just all disordered. It was all thrown out of whack, and Indiana was able to fill that vacuum. And then you also, because you have some programs that have, filled coaching vacancies and made changes, Wisconsin, Purdue, because at Nebraska, because you have so many programs that have already filled vacancies, it really limits the amount of places you would look to for possible hot seats. So Indiana would clearly be number one. And then I think number two is Michigan State. I think if Mel Tucker has a bad year, if he doesn't make a bowl, which I think is well within play, given the lack of player retention, the instability at the program. I mean, he's made some recruiting gains of late, but if he can't pull it together enough to get to a bowl game, then you're going to get some significant buyer's remorse in East Lansing, for banking on one season, resting on one season. Like that's the thing that athletic directors have to weigh. When they think that the coach is taking off like a rocket ship, but it's based on only one season. Like that's one of the biggest rolls of the dice that an athletic director will ever make. And sometimes it pays off. I'm sure you can find examples of that in college football history, but it certainly is a risk when it's just one season, just a perfect storm when everything comes together just right. And that was the big bet that Michigan State made on Mel Tucker. Now, if it's 5-7 as opposed to 3-9, that might matter. There is a lot of money invested in Tucker. So I'm not trying to say he's definitely gone if he fails to make a bowl game, but it will certainly, at the very least, it will certainly put him at the very head of the hot seat list heading into 2024, that he will eliminate any leverage. He will eliminate any leeway, wiggle room. If he doesn't make a bowl game this year, then he'll be a primary hot seat candidate going into next year. But now the big one, not necessarily the most. I'm not talking the most likely because again, that's Tom Allen. But here's the hypothetical that I'm sure a lot of people in Columbus are thinking about. If Ohio State goes 10-2, which again, 98% of college football coaches programs would kill for 10-2. But if Ohio State does it, and one of those two losses is to Jim Harbaugh, and of course that game's in Ann Arbor this year, so Michigan probably, if you're trying to project this from July, probably Michigan's going to be favored going into that game. So if Ohio State loses just one non-Michigan game and finishes 10-2, and then loses in Ann Arbor, is Ryan Day out? I think, whether you say yes or no, all right, that's less important than just you have to wrestle with that. It's not a slam dunk answer in either direction. I wouldn't say he's definitely gone, given the way Ohio State recruits and given, the track record of the New Year's Six bowls and Big Ten championship game appearances and what have you, having a playoff semifinal win over Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, all of that matters. And it's not just going to be wiped out, right away. But if Ohio State has a 3-game losing streak to Harbaugh and there's overall slippage, because this year before the 12-team playoff arrives in 2024, 10-2 means Ohio State's out. Ohio State would be out of the playoff, and the grumbling was loud enough after the loss to Michigan in Columbus last year. It kind of set the table. It kind of initiated that round of questioning. So now that we're in July, like we're several months past that loss last November in Ohio Stadium in the Horseshoe, if we just consider that hypothetical that Ohio State is 10-2 with a loss to Michigan included and thereby is out of the playoff, what happens to Ryan Day? And so that obviously Ohio State fans hope it never gets to that point. But if we do have that hypothetical, if that hypothetical becomes reality, that is going to be arguably the central non-college football playoff related plot point of late November, early December in 2023. And we'll see if we get there. But that is certainly something worth monitoring when we talk about Big Ten hot seats after Tom Allen and Mel Tucker.
I do believe that Ohio State is the most talented team in the Big Ten still. However, they have more question marks going into this season than Michigan with a new quarterback, less stability along the offensive line. Michigan has forged one of the better offensive line groups in college football, has won the Joe Moore 2 consecutive years, and Ohio State still continues. They lost 2 NFL tackles, so they are trying to work that out. The defense has not been to Michigan's standard the last 2 years, so I still believe it's a more talented team, and I think they showed that in the playoff game against Georgia, and they showed that on a more regular basis, more explosive and all those things. But, yeah, Michigan has the higher floor, and Ohio State travels to Michigan, and they travel to Notre Dame. They have a tougher schedule. They've got a trip to Wisconsin as well. They've got a tougher schedule, and can you imagine? I will say this, Matt, and you would be the guy that would be able to find and refute the statement I'm about to make. But if Ryan Day does get fired after a 10-2 year, I believe his record at Ohio State would be 55-8. I am going to say it right now. That's got to be the highest winning percentage of anybody who's ever been fired in the history of college football.
And who has coached at least like 50 or 60 games. Yes.
Yeah,
that seems pretty safe to say. Yeah. That's right. But, like Ohio State, they cut bait with John Cooper and over the Michigan game.
Yes.
And, now, big picture, Ohio State was very patient with John Cooper, as Buckeye fans know, in the early 1990s. They allowed him time to build the program his way after he took over from Earl Bruce. So that might have factored into the calculus of, hey, Coop, you had your run. We actually did give you a pretty long runway to do what you wanted to do. But nevertheless, Ohio State in the late 1990s was really, really strong. And you could certainly make the case that Ohio State was unduly impatient by the standards of the time when it fired Cooper, basically because he couldn't beat Lloyd Carr. And so here we are 2 decades later, and let's realize the playoff money that's there to be made and the ability to play your way into the national championship game with the 12-team playoff, meeting USC in the Big Ten, Harbaugh rising. The stakes are bigger because there's more money out there on the table, and there is more pressure, and there are going to be more spotlight moments, not fewer. Compared to John Cooper's time in the very early 2000s. So the idea of firing Ryan Day after a 10-2 season, I mean, on many levels, it's going to seem very ludicrous. But when you realize that Ohio State had its way with Michigan and then could lose 3 straight times to Harbaugh, I mean, just as a matter of fact, just in terms of assessing the actual political reality on the ground in Columbus, that would not go down well. It would not go down well. And precisely because of the memory that, in the end, the Jim Tressel hire, the replacement for John Cooper, it worked. It had its effect. We're going to take those fine young men and we're going to go to Ann Arbor and win, that worked. Tressel was outstanding. He's definitely elevated the program. He changed the game. He changed the equation for Ohio State football. So, when there are internal debates within and among members of the Ohio State community and the power structure, they're going to look back at Tressel Cooper and that handoff and say, hey, the last time we were impatient in the pursuit of victory, it was the right move. And so that's certainly going to lend some leverage if we get that Ryan Day 10-2 scenario that I alluded to. Again, we don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does, it's going to be an extremely fascinating story.
The coach with the third best record in his tenure behind only Nick Saban and Kirby Smart getting fired. That would just be something else. And we could both go through, of course, the history of sports and college football in particular and find moments that were this close, whether it was a measurement or a call or a toe out of bounds or whatever. And for Ryan Day, it, of course, would be a missed field goal from 50 yards. That would have, again, we're assuming a national championship win, but I think anybody reasonable knows that they would have won that game 95% of the time against TCU. And he's a national championship coach right now, and there's breathing room.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to contemplate all those many what ifs from college football history.
Before we bring Tim into the discussion here, we got Slap Happy. We appreciate your contribution there, Slap Happy. Thanks for being here. Trojans Live every Monday at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Matt Zemek makes it all work for us each and every Monday. Again, you can catch Matt's work. The link was dropped in the chat on Trojans Wire. We've got our buddy Tim Prangley stopping by to talk a little USC for a few minutes. Tim, how's it going?
I had to come in and break up the Buckeye talk because us Trojans in the chat were going, are we on the right show here? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you leave me an opening there, then I'm going to take it on.
Yeah. Well, no, I came on. I also wanted to clarify. So Taylor Tatum is an amazing talent. I mean, you guys watch that guy. He's one of the most complete backs I've seen in a long time. And he's got the numbers. He's not the fastest guy, but he could break some tackles. He's got great hands. And I would love for him to be a Trojan. But we don't need help on offense at USC, and quite frankly, there's a few positions on the field where we don't usually need help. That's quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. When you get a player the talent level of Viliamu-Asa, who is just amazing, he's a St. John Bosco guy, so I'm a little bit biased, but he is a number one linebacker on the West Coast. That's going to be that piece is going to tie this defensive class together, and he's going to be announcing. We know that anyone's been following recruiting long enough knows that you don't commit to a program in June or July or August. You don't really sign a lot down line until the early signing day in December. And sometimes that goes all the way into February. And with Deuce Robinson, it went all the way into what, Matt? Like May, or I can't remember how long that thing went. It went on forever on that recruitment. So it's not. It also, one more thing. We're talking about how he's wearing Buckeye gloves. Everyone slow down. If you guys remember the official visit, who was his first visit? USC. He was all about USC. Then he goes to Notre Dame. Now he's all about Notre Dame. Then he goes to Ohio State. Then he's all about Ohio State. So let these kids have fun. Let them enjoy the process. They've busted their asses for like 3 years of high school football. And this is their time with their family to enjoy the process. And I know that his mom and he, this kid's a 4.0 student, KVA. He is going to make academics a very important part of his decision. And I think it's going to be a tight one. And it could be all three. Like Matt was saying that I said that I think he's trying those two schools. Again, it's a very fluid process. And if you ask me what is in the mind of my teenagers, it's like that changes when the wind changes, right? And these kids aren't that fickle. This is their future, but there's a lot that goes into a commitment. And, when you have you start seeing these coaches talking to you, you get pumped up off these visits. Of course, that's going to sway what you're saying out to the public or maybe what gloves you're wearing. I like USC's chances still in this overall, But I'm not saying USC is running away with it whatsoever. And I'm also, when I said that KVA over Tatum, simply because of need. Taylor Tatum's an amazing athlete, amazing young man. We'd love to have him as well. So don't get me wrong. And then one more thing, I'm gonna hop out. So now we've stopped the Buckeye bleeding. I'm gonna Deuce Robinson. I think it's been 8 rounds in the draft, the MLB draft have gone through, and his name hasn't been called yet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say this. I'm not going, yay! I'm not excited like some Trojans. I'm not going, all right, yeah. You know, I mean, this is some kid's life, and then if he could have been a millionaire, you know, the next great MLB star, and go off and make millions for him and his family, I'm all about that as well. I mean, at some point you got to realize I'm a fan, but you know, I like people even more. And if this kid could have been a first round or second round, or third round choice, go off and make millions. More power to you, kid. But it's looking like that maybe. That situation for now is probably going to be put on the back burner. And man, I'm telling you, Pac-12, they have no idea what they're getting. There's going to be 2 guys, Deuce Robinson and Zach Branch. These 2 guys as a freshman tandem might be 2. I mean, we've had some great freshman duos at USC in the past. I'm sure Ohio State has too, but this is going to be something special. And with Lincoln Riley and you have a Heisman quarterback throwing the ball out, I'm really excited.
Tim, we do appreciate you being here, and you've got some exciting news for us as well, right?
Well, on Thursday at 6 o'clock, we're going to do a roundtable. I tried to get together. I thought myself, who? Now I'm lucky because I can talk to Matt all the time. Right? I can talk to Rick. I could talk to Tony, and we could talk USC all the time. I thought, who else do I want? Who do I think people are going to hear from? And I looked out in the community, and the community right now, as far as YouTube community, there's 2 really great guys out there doing amazing stuff with their videos. You have USCJ over on his channel. Just great insight. He's really tapped into the recruiting. Talk about if you want recruiting news, he's really good with the recruiting news. And then also on the same token, you have Gabe G Greens on his channel, just killing it with the coverage of recruiting and just breaking news. I'm like, you know, what if I could get all 3 of us together and we can sit down and talk kind of like a round table? And then I started talking to USC Jade. He said, yeah, I'm all about it. And then G Greens hopped on too. And then I thought, who would be the perfect thing to tie us together? And I've had Rusty from Arrogant Nation on. He's like one of the best Twitter out there. He's going to join us. So it's going to be us 4 in a round table discussion talking about the events today. And it's going to be every week on Thursdays, starting on our channel first. And then we're going to rotate to JT's channel. And then we're going to go to Gabe's channel. We're just going to keep rotating between the 3 channels. So if you guys are at the sub up, you know, or just keep track of what channel we're going to be on, because it's going to be every Thursday through the season. So I hope you guys will come check that out.
That is phenomenal. We are doing everything we possibly can, and Tim in the lead when it comes to providing and delivering content for all of you and coming up with great ideas. So I'm excited about this collaboration and to put different perspectives together. That's when it becomes fun, when you have different ideas, different viewpoints, perspectives on the same topic, and you know, everyone gets their look at you know, whatever the conversation is, and I think that's just a win-win for the viewers and the listeners who get to hear different perspectives, because you know, you all have your go-to guys and go-to shows, but when they can be challenged by others, that's when it becomes fun.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's gonna be great because I would just love to. I would sit down with these 3 guys in a bar and talk football with them. So I get to do it for an hour each week. You guys get to be a part of it. I'm sure it's gonna follow the same model that USCJ and that Rick and I do, where we're completely driven by you guys, the community. You guys, your questions, any topics you want us to cover. We're going to come with a couple of our own topics, but you know, we're up for whatever fan interaction that you have to join us. You're all welcome. So again, on this channel on Thursday, it'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. Thank you both for taking your time. Remember, it's not over until the fat lady sings, and looks like Deuce is safe with us. And I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Tim.
That's great stuff. Yeah. Tim and the guys from those other channels getting together. That's going to be a good time. That's going to be a fun time. That is going to be providing a lot of insight. And again, when you get guys with the similar perspectives in certain ways, but they're certainly going to challenge each other in other ways in their viewpoint on USC from all different aspects, I'm sure, in terms of topics and everything leading up to fall camp. So we hear Tim's passion and his knowledge every week here already. And so I know he's going to deliver, and he's really impressed with these other contributors. So it should be a strong show.
One thing that Tim said in his remarks, which was particularly on point, and it's worth talking about, Mark, and everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football. And he mentioned, what Deuce Robinson can become within Lincoln Riley's system. So in other words, you're not just talking about the raw material that Deuce Robinson himself possesses, which is considerable by itself, but you have someone who can mold him. You have someone who can work him into a scheme, into a series of play calls, packages that can really maximize his potential. And I mention this because, and touching on what we've been talking about with recruiting and the value of certain positions versus others, when we talk about the need for USC to win, the high profile recruiting battles on the defensive side of the ball, and that those things really do matter more than offense, it plays into this reality that, like, Alex Grinch's ability to develop defensive players is nowhere near Lincoln Riley's ability to develop offensive players. Like, these aren't just two different zip codes. These are two different continents in terms of proven player development. And so for that reason, like, USC just cannot give Alex Grinch enough depth. There's no such thing as having too much depth for Alex Grinch on that side of the ball at USC. And really, when you get down to the nitty gritty, in terms of like the central thing that's going to affect the trajectory and the ultimate outcome of USC's season. I mean, we can talk about players, Bear Alexander, Anthony Lucas, Damani Jackson, Mason Cobb, Shane Lee, Romello Height. I mean, you can go on and on and on. You can talk about like the injured players who weren't available last year and are coming back this year. You can talk about the transfer portal. You can talk about recruits such as Tackett Curtis. You can talk on and on and on about, how well players are going to perform, but really underline that. What are we really talking about? We are talking about as the number one key to USC's whole season. I mean, if we just assume that, Caleb Williams is going to be healthy, all right, we can just assume that one thing. What's really the number one key? Number one out of everything in terms of creating the outcomes that USC fans want, like having a top 50, top 40 defense. You pair that with what's going to be a number one, number two offense. But what feeds into the right outcomes for USC? The ultimate answer, the central answer, like getting to the core of the core, is Alex Grinch's player development on defense. That's it. Like, I mean, we can talk about the schematic moves and adjustments that Alex Grinch is going to make. We can talk about, how he handles the depth chart and the rotations of players, given that, USC is going to be playing 9 straight weeks 4 through 12. We've talked about that. We've talked about a lot of different things. And so because we've talked about so many different things in the offseason, an offseason which is now, basically a month and a half away from being over, and we finally get to tee it up and actually see this team on the field in late August. We've talked about so many things that it's easy to just get distracted by each shiny little object, each talking point, right? And you can't care about everything equally. I said that earlier. If you want to care about something more than anything else, and if you want to look at a factor that's going to have just about more weight than anything else in influencing this 2023 season for USC, it is Alex Grinch's player development. You could also say it's Dante Williams' player development in the secondary in terms of, he's a recruiting stud. He's a recruiting monster. We know that. Can the coaching match the recruiting? Can the player development match the player acquisition that we've seen at USC? So Tim Prening's point about Deuce Robinson within Lincoln Riley's offense, like, you can be confident that Deuce Robinson's going to be a great player, not just because he's super talented and versatile, but because you have a proven developer of skill position talent guiding him through the whole process. And you have an elite quarterback who's going to make him look good as well. And you don't have those same kinds of presences, those same kinds of pillars, proven pillars on the defensive side of the ball for USC. So that's what magnifies this whole conversation about needing to get more defensive players, needing to win more recruiting battles on defense. It all plays into some larger realities that people need to be aware of and need to be reminded of at USC.
You have to wonder if there was hesitancy on Lincoln Riley's part when he brought Alex Grinch with him. We'll never know. But of course, he had him there as defensive coordinator for, I believe, starting the I don't remember if it was 18 or 19 season.
Well, Mike Stoops got fired midway through 18. So Grinch's first full season was 19.
Okay. 19, 20, 21, 3 seasons at Oklahoma and 3 marginal, to be kind, lackluster level defenses.
And we talked earlier about Tom Allen in Indiana. Like, their one really good year was the pandemic year. Alex Grinch's one really good year was the pandemic year, 2020. So that's a good reminder there in terms of that larger context.
Yeah, I guess I didn't fill in with my comments on both Mel Tucker and Tom Allen, but I'm right there with you in regards to those were the first 2 that came to mind in that order. And the Mel Tucker hang up is going to be the contract, I would think. Maybe just a little bit too rich for Michigan State to pay him off, to buy him out after just a second year after the first big season, the 11-2 top 10 finish, Peach Bowl victory team. And then most of those 11 wins went to the NFL draft in the form of Kenneth Walker Jr. or the third. And, a transfer portal laden team that was just kind of built for one season and really wasn't. They were a good team, not an 11-2 team. Ohio State was beating them 49-0 at halftime. So, there was a little smoke and mirrors there to kind of get them through that season. And like you said, we've seen this from a number of athletic directors thinking, okay, do I want to keep and hang on to this commodity and overpay and overextend possibly to just ensure the future? Man, but they overpaid for him leaving Colorado, coming to Michigan State.
That's right.
Based on 5-7 and not having a head coaching resume. They overpaid for him. So I think that they were safe and they overreached and didn't need to, is my thought.
Absolutely. So it's not as though the extension was the first time that Michigan State really overplayed its hand. Absolutely.
They're in a tough spot in this conference, and it's only going to get tougher with the additions coming in 2024, where there is a level of expectation. Mark D'Antonio has delivered. They have their high points throughout their history. It can be done there, but it's difficult. And it's very much at its best under Mark D'Antonio as a lunch pail kind of program that would be able to maximize their resources and go toe to toe with Ohio State in particular and come out with some big victories at times. And so it can be done, but it's a very interesting checkered kind of program in regards to results, and going up against Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State obviously doesn't work out for them most of the time, but still there is a level of expectation that they should win there, and they see themselves as being a major player in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. Tim left a comment. How do we keep going back to the Big Ten? Tim, want to tell you something. Remember the Big Ten football schedule was released in June? That was a big deal. And those stories were those stories were highly read on Trojans Wire. We had some of our best page view days of the past 3 months when people wanted to read about Big Ten schedules. And Tim, here's the other thing. So next week, we're going to be previewing Pac-12 Media Day, right? Next week is our Pac-12 Media Day preview. And then on the other side of that, Monday, July 24, we review Pac-12 Media Day. Like, we're going to look at the media poll. We're going to look at, all these things Pac-12. So like, Tim, we're coming toward the end of Big 10 summer here at the Voice of College Football, also at Trojans Wire. Like, I've been doing, Mark, I don't know if you've been reading the site a lot. I know you're hugely busy. You have your national shows, you have your Big 10 shows. So like, I'm not expecting that you're reading up on Trojans Wire. Like, I only expect that once the season starts. But if you have been peeking at Trojans Wire occasionally, you might notice that I'm posting I've done podcasts with Rutgers Wire, Hawkeyes Wire, Cornhuskers Wire. Like, we're trying to educate the USC fan base on the Big 10, and the Big 10 schedule release kind of gave us license. It gave us really the opportunity, the opening to have like a Big 10 summer until Pac-12 Media Day. And then it becomes, about the Pac-12 season and everything USC that is doing within that context. So Tim, that's kind of an explainer on the framework here, that up until Pac-12 Media Day, it is USC's Big 10 summer tour, both at Trojans Wire and here at the Voice of College Football. But then once we get to Media Day and Kliavkoff and the coaches and the players and the media poll and all that good stuff, then it's Pac-12 conference season, and we're going to do it right. Doing the send-off with the Pac-12, that's going to be our prime point of focus. So that's just an explainer for why the methodology has been what it's been at Trojans Wire and why we've had a lot of Big 10 talk here at USC Trojans Live on the Voice of College Football. That basically, starting with the Big 10 schedule, it was a chance for us to have Big 10 centric content. And, Trojans Wire really is in this in-between position where we're wanting to cover the Pac-12, but we're wanting to inform and enrich and enlighten about the Big 10 as well. And hey, as a site editor, as a blogger, like, I've needed these two different strands of content to carry the website through the summer months. So that's another part of the equation, just in terms of my day job and what I regularly do. But anyway, Pac-12 Media Day, we preview it next week. We review it 2 weeks from tonight here at the Voice of College Football. And then, we don't have to have the Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck debate, whether it's duck season or rabbit season. It will be Pac-12 season next week at the Voice of College Football.
And once we clear that Pac-12 Media Day, the guys are going to be on the field practicing. Now, we're not going to have a ton of information, folks. Everyone wants to know, after one day of practice, what do you guys think? Who's looking good? Who's not looking so good? Hang on. Just let things develop a little bit. The intel doesn't come out, number one, for a while. And, we'll be reading the tea leaves and catching every little news conference and press conference and side interview to try to pick up as much as possible. But, hang on in that. And I understand you're excited and want to get every jump on what could possibly be in store for the season. But yes, we'll be on the other side of Pac-12 Media Day, reviewing Media Day, and then right into August camp. And of course, a short August camp, or I think I should rephrase that. They give everyone the same amount of time. Practice is backed up because of USC playing that week 0 game against San Jose State. Absolutely. Appreciate all of you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, we've got YouTube memberships here at the Voice of College Football. So check it out. Go to the front page and you will see the tiers that are available and the exclusive content in tiers 2 and 3. The top 2 tiers are the ones that you want to look at for the exclusive content with Matt and myself. And we've got about 10 segments that are available for you. The choice cuts on USC discussion, some really intriguing topics. And this is just another place where Matt excels. Matt excels all over the place, whether it's historical insight, giving the analogy that he just gave. He bailed me out in terms of Tim's chiding us about talking about the Big Ten, and Matt spun a nice little narrative about Big Ten summer there that was well crafted. And here we are with another USC exclusive coming up tonight. So again, lock it in with our exclusive bonus content. You can sign up on the front page of the channel. All right. Yeah, and we will of course go back into the schedule. It's will also be time possibly to bring in maybe, if not the entire schedule of media contributors to run through the entire schedule, including the San Jose States of the world. We'll certainly hit the highlights, but we would love to be able to get at least a quick hitter from everybody on USC's schedule. And maybe with San Jose State, it's so close to the season, we'll bring them on as a preview during preview week, during game week. Yep. Excellent. All right, folks, I believe we've hit the end of the line. I don't see any other conversation topics left to go. And again, it's Thursday night with Tim and those other YouTubers getting together on Thursday night. That's at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, USC Roundtable. And then, of course, another doubleheader next Sunday and Monday with Trojan Conquest live on Sunday. And then Matt and I get together next Monday for USC Trojans live right here at the Voice of College Football. Again, check out the YouTube memberships. They're well worth your while. And we will see you next Sunday and Monday. Don't forget the roundtable on Thursday as well.